Receiving an alert about a hospital fire, a black firefighter quickly rushes to the scene for the rescue. Upon learning that someone is still trapped inside, he charges in without hesitation. Reaching the upper floor, he finds an elderly woman stranded in her hospital room. Carrying her on his back, he pushes through the flames, enduring injuries with every step. After bringing her to safety, he collapses from exhaustion. What he doesn't know is that his bravery today will change his life forever. Before we dive in this story, do you remember the first job you ever had? Let's comment below. The night was supposed to be calm. It had been an unusually quiet shift at Station 17, the kind that made firefighters uneasy, as if the city were holding its breath before chaos erupted. The only sounds were the occasional hum of passing cars outside, the rhythmic drip of a leaky faucet in the kitchen, and the low murmurs of late-night conversations among the men who hadn't turned in yet. Marcus Carter had just sat down on the edge of his cot, stretching out his aching shoulders. The weight of the day clung to him. Small rescues, a minor kitchen fire, the kind of routine calls that made up most of their days. He exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. Maybe tonight, just for once, they'd get through without. The station alarm exploded through the silence, a piercing wail that sent his heart into overdrive. Within seconds, the room was alive with movement. Boots hit the floor, voices shouted, lockers slammed. Muscle memory took over as Marcus sprang from his cot, already yanking on his gear. Around him, his team moved with practiced efficiency, pulling on jackets, fastening helmets, strapping on gloves. The air, once still, now crackled with urgency. The dispatcher's voice blared through the intercom, sharp and urgent. Major structure fire downtown Los Angeles. Rapid spread. Affected areas include residential buildings and St. Mary's Hospital. Evacuation in progress, some patients still unaccounted for. All available units respond immediately. Marcus's pulse quickened. A hospital fire. That meant people who couldn't run. Elderly patients, those hooked to machines, nurses who would refuse to leave without their charges. This wasn't just another burning building. This was a fight against time. Within moments, the fire trucks roared out of the station, their sirens cutting through the night like a battle cry. Marcus stood at the back of the truck, gripping the safety rail as the city blurred past. He could already see the thick plumes of black smoke rising into the sky, staining the horizon like ink spilling into water. The acrid scent of burning wood and plastic seeped into his nostrils, even from miles away. As they turned the final corner, the full magnitude of the disaster unfolded before them. The hospital, once a beacon of safety, was now engulfed in chaos. Flames clawed at the building's side, windows shattering under the unbearable heat. The night sky flickered orange and red, as if the stars themselves had caught fire. Screams and coughing filled the air, mingling with the relentless wailing of sirens. The ground was a battlefield. Firefighters sprinted back and forth, hauling hoses, breaking down doors, guiding soot-covered patients toward waiting ambulances. A nurse, her face streaked with sweat and ash, rushed past, clutching the trembling hand of an elderly woman in a hospital gown. Smoke curled from the broken windows above, thick and suffocating. The radio on Marcus's shoulder crackled to life. "Carter, take your team and clear the 3rd and 4th floors. We need to get everyone out before we lose the structure." "Copy that," Marcus responded, already moving. He pulled his mask over his face and tightened his grip on the axe slung over his shoulder. Every second counted. Inside the hospital, the heat hit him like a physical blow. It was like stepping into an oven, the air so thick with smoke that it felt like breathing in sandpaper. The sprinkler system had long since failed, leaving only the relentless advance of fire in its place. The walls groaned under the strain of the heat, paint blistering, ceiling tiles crumbling. His team worked swiftly, guiding patients toward the stairwell, lifting those who couldn't walk. Marcus helped an elderly man with burns on his arms, his frail frame trembling against the weight of the destruction around him. "You're going to be okay, sir," Marcus assured him, even as the floor beneath them vibrated ominously. "Just keep moving." They were making progress. The stairwell was still intact. For now. Marcus ushered the last of the evacuees down the steps before turning back. "One more sweep, just in case." That was when the nurse appeared, her face pale beneath a layer of soot. She grabbed his arm, her fingers trembling. "There's still someone up there," she gasped between coughs. "Room 312, an elderly woman. She can't move, her leg is in a cast. She doesn't have a chance if—" Marcus didn't let her finish. He already knew what had to be done. His radio buzzed with his captain's voice. "Carter, get out now. The fire's spreading faster than we expected. We're losing the building." Marcus hesitated for only a fraction of a second. His team stood at the stairwell, their eyes filled with the same grim realization. Going back meant gambling his own life against the fire. But that wasn't even a choice. "I'm going," he said firmly. One of his teammates reached for him. "Marcus, wait." "So I really need to have time to wait." And then he was running. The stairs groaned beneath his boots, each step an act of defiance against the flames consuming the floors above. The smoke was thicker now, coiling around him like living hands, trying to pull him down. His lungs screamed for air despite the mask, his muscles burning from the relentless heat. When he reached the third floor, he could already hear the fire closing in, crackling with an almost predatory hunger. The door to room 312 was barely visible through the smoke. He forced it open. Inside, the woman sat hunched on her hospital bed, her right leg encased in a thick plaster cast. She looked up, eyes wide with shock, the fear in them cutting through the haze like a knife. I can't move fast enough," she stammered, her voice fragile over the roar of destruction outside. Marcus's mind raced. There was no time for second-guessing. He quickly assessed his gear. Fireproof blanket, protective vest, an oxygen mask, but as he checked his bag, a realization hit him like a gut punch. He had forgotten to bring a second breathing mask. He didn't hesitate. He pulled off his own and secured it over her face. "Take deep breaths," he instructed. No arguments. He crouched in front of her, carefully lifting her onto his back, her good arm locking weakly around his neck. "Hold on tight, ma'am. We're getting out of here." As he stepped back into the hallway, a section of the ceiling collapsed, sending flaming debris crashing between him and the stairwell. The entire floor shuddered, as if the building itself was giving a final warning. Marcus clenched his jaw. He had made a promise, and he was going to keep it. The heat was unbearable. Even through his fire-resistant gear, Marcus could feel it pressing against his skin, a suffocating force that made every breath feel like he was inhaling flames. The air was thick with smoke, swirling in dense clouds, reducing his visibility to mere feet in front of him. His boots thudded against the floor as he adjusted his grip on the elderly woman, her frail arms trembling as they clung around his shoulders. Every instinct screamed at him to move faster. Behind him, the hallway groaned as the fire licked hungrily at the walls. The wooden door frames, already charred and brittle, cracked under the growing heat. The stairwell he had used earlier was no longer an option. Flames now curled around the edges, a roaring inferno blocking his path. The only way out was through an alternate exit on the other side of the hospital, a route he had memorized during their initial sweep, but time was slipping away. The woman on his back coughed weakly, the oxygen mask over her face barely filtering out the thick smoke. Her voice was fragile when she spoke. Are we going to make it?" Marcus tightened his hold, adjusting her weight to secure her against his back. "I promised, didn't I?" His voice was steady, unwavering, even though doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. A loud crack echoed through the building. Marcus flinched as a chunk of the ceiling caved in just feet behind them, sending a rain of burning debris cascading to the floor. The impact sent a shockwave of heat rushing forward, searing the exposed skin of his neck. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. Every step was a battle. His breath came heavy, each inhale stinging against the rawness in his throat. The hallway ahead was partially collapsed, rubble and broken glass littering the floor. He had to be careful. One misstep, one wrong move, and he would go down. With her. The fire alarm screamed overhead, an eerie soundtrack to the destruction unfolding around them. The hospital walls, once pristine and white, were now blackened and crumbling, deep cracks snaking along their surfaces. The structure was losing its integrity. It wouldn't hold much longer. Marcus's radio crackled to life, barely audible over the roar of the flames. "Marcus, do you copy? Where the hell are you?" It was his captain. His voice was tight, laced with an urgency that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through Marcus's veins. He lifted the radio to his mouth, but before he could respond, a deafening explosion tore through the floor below. The shockwave hit like a sledgehammer, sending Marcus staggering forward. He barely managed to stay on his feet, shielding the woman with his body as the walls trembled violently. Smoke and dust billowed around them, and in that brief moment of chaos, he realized the worst possible truth. The only exit was gone. The explosion had obliterated the section of the building leading to their escape route. Where there had once been a hallway, now there was nothing but a gaping void, fire raging on the other side. Marcus clenched his jaw, his mind racing. He could feel the woman trembling against him, her shallow breaths pressing against his neck. She was scared, and for the first time so was he. But fear wasn't an option. He turned sharply, scanning the room for alternatives. There, a window. It was their only chance. Adjusting his grip, he hurried toward it, his boots skidding against the soot-covered floor. The glass was intact, but already showing signs of warping from the heat. He wasted no time, raising his elbow and slamming it forward. The window shattered, shards of glass raining onto the fire escape below. A gust of fresh air rushed in, cool and sharp against his sweat-drenched skin. The relief was instant, but it was short-lived. The fire was right behind them. The woman coughed, trying to lift her head. "Go. Leave me, son. You won't make it carrying me." Marcus barely suppressed the frustration rising in his chest. "Not happening," he said, hoisting her higher. "Hold on." Stepping onto the ledge, he steadied himself. The fire escape was rusted, barely hanging onto the side of the building. It groaned under his weight as he tested it, making sure it wouldn't give out beneath them. It wasn't ideal, but it was their only shot. Behind them, the fire roared louder, as if it could sense its prey slipping away. Marcus took one last breath and stepped forward. The fire escape groaned beneath Marcus's weight, the rusted metal trembling as he carefully shifted his footing. The night air was a stark contrast to the inferno raging behind him. Cool, crisp, but tainted with a thick stench of smoke. He adjusted his grip on the elderly woman, feeling the slight tremor in her frail body as she clung to him. She was terrified, and she had every reason to be. Their escape was hanging by a thread. Above them, the narrow staircase descended into darkness, barely visible through the thick haze. Flames reflected off the nearby windows, casting jagged, flickering shadows that made the descent even more treacherous. Marcus knew they had no time. The fire was moving fast, devouring everything in its path. The building was unstable, its structure compromised. Any second now, it could give way entirely. A sudden crack split the air as another explosion ripped through the hospital. The force sent a shockwave through the walls, shaking the fire escape violently. Marcus instinctively wrapped himself tighter around the woman, bracing for impact as the entire staircase lurched downward. The metal bolts strained, groaning under the stress. For a heart-stopping second, he thought the whole structure would rip free from the wall and send them plummeting into the alley below. The woman gasped against his shoulder. "Dear God!" "Hold on," Marcus barked, tightening his grip. He forced himself forward, ignoring the sharp pain in his legs as he stepped onto the first rung of the ladder. The metal was scorching hot, burning through his gloves, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving. Each step sent a fresh wave of agony through his muscles. His body screamed for rest, but he couldn't stop. Not when they were this close. Halfway down, a section of the escape suddenly buckled. The rusted bolts snapped one after another, the screech of twisting metal cutting through the chaos. The platform beneath them tilted violently, sending Marcus slamming against the railing. His vision blurred as pain shot through his ribs, but he held on, one hand locked around the bar, the other still gripping the woman against him. "Marcus, do you copy?" His radio crackled with static, his captain's voice cutting through the roar of the fire. "We're losing the building. Where are you?" Marcus tried to respond, but his breath was ragged, each word scraping against the rawness in his throat. "Coming down. Fire escape." A terrible groan came from above, deep and ominous. Marcus didn't have to look to know what was happening. The building was about to collapse. The weight of the fire, the damage, it was all too much. The walls were giving in. The alley below was still at least 20 feet away. If they waited any longer, they'd be buried beneath tons of debris. No choice. Marcus sucked in a sharp breath, adjusted his grip, and jumped. The world tilted as they plummeted, the wind rushing against his face, the burning hospital vanishing above them. He twisted mid-air, angling his body to absorb the impact. They crashed down hard, rolling onto the asphalt, the force knocking the breath from his lungs. The woman let out a sharp cry as they hit the ground, but Marcus barely registered it. His vision swam, the edges darkening. Somewhere in the distance he could hear shouts, footsteps pounding against pavement. Flashing lights cut through the smoke, firefighters, paramedics, people running toward them. Marcus! Strong hands grabbed him, voices yelling over the chaos. He tried to move, tried to focus, but his limbs were leaden, his ribs ached, his lungs burned. The world around him blurred. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the woman being lifted onto a stretcher, her oxygen mask still secured to her face. And then everything faded to black. The first thing Marcus felt was pain, a deep aching throb that pulsed through every inch of his body, radiating from his ribs, his back, his arms, everywhere. His skin felt raw as if it had been scraped against concrete. He tried to shift, but the weight pressing against his chest made it nearly impossible. The second thing he noticed was sound, a steady beep, 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 rhythmic and constant, the unmistakable hum of hospital machines. Voices murmured nearby, distant yet familiar, cutting through the haze of unconsciousness. With effort, Marcus forced his eyes open. The fluorescent lights above were blinding, their sterile glow making his vision blur before it slowly adjusted. The walls around him were white, clean, nothing like the scorched ruin he had been in. He was in a hospital, alive. His throat was dry, every breath sending a dull sting through his lungs. He swallowed, then winced as pain shot through his ribs. As his senses sharpened, memories came flooding back. The fire, the woman, the free fall into darkness. Did she make it? Before he could attempt to move, the door creaked open. A nurse entered, followed closely by a man Marcus had never seen before. Tall, well-dressed, with sharp features and an air of quiet authority, the man looked completely out of place in a hospital room. But his eyes held something familiar. Gratitude. Relief. "You're awake," the man said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Marcus tried to sit up, but the nurse was at his side in an instant. "Take it easy, Mr. Carter. You took quite the beating." She adjusted the IV in his arm, her expression softening. "You've been out for almost 24 hours. Marcus exhaled, sinking back against the pillows. His mind was still sluggish, but one question pushed through the fog. He turned to the stranger, his voice hoarse. "The woman, did she—" A small smile tugged at the man's lips. "She's fine, thanks to you." He took a step closer, extending a hand. "Richard Donovan." The name didn't register at first, but then realization dawned. Marcus had heard it before, on the news, in business articles. Richard Donovan, billionaire, CEO, one of the wealthiest men in... Marcus stared, confused. "I don't understand." Richard sat in the chair beside the bed, his gaze unwavering. "The woman you saved. Her name is Eleanor Donovan, my mother." He let out a breath, shaking his head slightly, as if still trying to grasp the reality of it. "The doctors said if you hadn't gone back for her, she wouldn't have made it. You risked everything for a stranger." Marcus swallowed, the words settling over him. He hadn't known who she was. It hadn't mattered. "She wasn't a stranger," he murmured. "She was someone who needed help." Richard studied him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, placing it on the bedside table. "I know you didn't do this expecting anything in return, but that doesn't mean I won't repay you." Marcus frowned. "That's not necessary." Richard smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but I insist." The nurse excused herself, leaving them alone. Marcus hesitated before glancing at the envelope. Inside was a letter, along with documents, bank statements, deeds. His heart rate spiked as he scanned the words. Debts paid, mortgage cleared, a new home built for his mother, and at the bottom something even more staggering. A foundation, a firefighter relief fund, named after him. Marcus blinked, his fingers tightening around the paper. This is... He trailed off, at a loss for words. Richard leaned forward. You've spent your life protecting people. It's time someone looked out for you. He exhaled, his expression sincere. I don't just want to repay you, Marcus. I want to honor what you did, what you do. Emotion swelled in Marcus's chest, raw and unexpected. He had never done this job for recognition, never for rewards, but knowing that something good, something lasting would come from it made the pain, the scars, the near-death experience worth it. He looked up, meeting Richard's gaze. Thank you. Richard nodded. No, thank you. Marcus Carter never sought recognition. He had always believed that being a firefighter wasn't about medals or newspaper headlines. It was about doing what was right no matter the cost. But as he sat in his hospital bed, recovering from the burns and bruises he had earned carrying an elderly woman through a raging inferno, the world outside had already turned him into something more than just a man doing his job. News stations replayed the footage over and over. Firefighters carrying him out, his gear blackened with soot, his body limp from exhaustion. The image of him shielding the woman as they escaped had been captured by a bystander, and within hours it spread like wildfire. The Guardian of St. Mary's, they called him. Outside the hospital, people gathered, leaving flowers and letters of gratitude. Messages poured in from strangers, fellow firefighters, and even children who now saw him as a hero. Schools used his story to teach about courage, about selflessness. Social media flooded with his name, his face, his sacrifice becoming something greater than himself. But Marcus didn't see himself as special. He had done what any firefighter would do. He had done what his father, also a firefighter, had once told him years ago. You don't run from the fire, son. You run into it. Yet, as he stood before a crowd at the opening ceremony of the foundation named after him, a fund dedicated to supporting injured firefighters and their families, he realized that sometimes an act of bravery wasn't just about saving a life. Sometimes it was about inspiring others to be brave, to believe in something bigger than themselves. That night, as he looked out at the city skyline, the distant glow of streetlights reminding him of the fire's blaze, he understood the weight of what had happened. He had become a symbol, not just of survival, but of sacrifice, of courage, of what it truly meant to be a hero. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.